What's up, guys? The final score is back again. We're live again tonight, and we've been talking for a while about off-season NFL. Of course, you've got the XFL going on right now. You've got the USFL coming, but it's kind of in a every year it kind of puts me in like a football hangover. Well, this year I decided I was going to take care of that. I had a solution. We are going to attempt. It's an attempt to do as many of the NFL teams with fans of that team. We're going to get their top 10 favorite players of all time. And, from each team in the NFL, some of them will be kind of hard. Some of them will be, I've got too many people that want to do for some. But this one right here, I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit about our guest tonight. On Twitter, a couple years ago, I was doing a lot of polls on Twitter. This guy followed me on Twitter then. He had a lot of comments in there. And, I got to thinking about it. I said, well, I don't know many Buffalo Bills fans, and I'm in North Carolina. I don't know many Buffalo Bills fans. This guy is a diehard Buffalo Bills fan. And I said, what better? I said, I got to reach out to him. So I reached out to him. He's here tonight. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Guy.
Appreciate you having me. Love to be here.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and get it out of the way. How long have you been a Buffalo Bills fan?
All my life since 1985. I was born into it. There's no avoiding it. I'm here in Buffalo, New York. I mean,
wow.
Yeah, I'm here getting ready for the snow to come tomorrow. And
y'all got snow coming?
Yeah, we always have snow coming. There's always snow coming.
Yeah, Buffalo. It's in New York. Yeah, we're in North Carolina where the weather changes like you change your underwear. It could be 30 degrees high one night, and then it could go to 80 the next day. So, Mother Nature is so screwed up right now over here. It's pitiful. But, yeah, so me being a Steelers fan, I'm in North Carolina. Almost everybody in my family were Redskin fans at the time. When I was a kid, when I was old enough to know what a football was, except for me and my cousin that lived next door to me. We were both Steeler fans, and we've been, since I was 5 years old. So I'm going on 50 now. So 45 years, and seen the ups and downs just like you have with Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, I always like to see somebody that's not what I call a rent a fan. That what? How many? I mean, I know the Steelers have had theirs. And Buffalo, when they caught fire, when Kelly and them started, you had a lot of rent a fan of Buffalo fans, I'm sure.
You do, and you see a few now too. I don't want to.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
Josh
mind
Allen come along
fans
and they started playing like that.
But
Everybody was like, okay. We've got a comment coming in already, and this is going to be a painful for you. People are already talking about Scott Norwood bringing his name.
Bring it.
Neil Callahan, wow, dude, you just had to do Scott Norwood, huh? But anyway, we'll get to that. We'll get to your top 10 and we'll start that just a second. We're just looking at some stuff. The combines, of course, started today. I always like to try to watch a little bit of that. Georgia, a defensive lineman from Georgia, 4.4. I mean, oh man. That's not, you think about it, a guy that big can run a 4.440. I'm not stepping in that guy's way. I'm sorry.
I mean, I have someone on my top 10 list who was a defensive lineman who could do a 4.4, and he was a big guy. Yeah, you don't want to get that big a guy moving that fast because the quarterback's going to have a lot of trouble there.
Yeah, and of course, some sad news coming out today out of the NFL. Jerry Richardson, who was the Panthers founder, former owner, died today at 86. We definitely send out our condolences to his family and friends and to the Panthers family. Some news, of course, some news coming out of the Super Bowl. Longtime NFL groundskeeper says the Super Bowl field was overwatered. Which makes sense.
Yeah, it looked overwatered.
You could see the slippery conditions all through the game for both. So, I mean, but you can't say it favored one team over the other because both teams were slipping. I mean, I don't know. It said 94-year-old George, the Sodfather, Toma, placing blame on the league's field director Ed Mangan for the turf issues during the Super Bowl. His quote was, Mangan waters the hell out of it and puts it right into the stadium, and that's it. Never see sunlight again. He can't do that. He also added that the field had a rotten smell and wasn't sanded enough. So if you're wondering about the slipping during the game, the sod father just filled you in on what
not enough sand.
Not enough. It wasn't sanded enough. Okay. So what else have we got here? Basically the combines. Of course, they're still talking about Lamar Jackson, whether he's going to be a Raven next year or not. I honestly don't think he will. I think he keeps turning down and up in the ante because he wants to be somewhere else. I don't know what you think about that.
You think so? I think he wants to stay in Baltimore. I think Baltimore is the best place for him to succeed. I think they've built that offense around him, and they're dedicated to running the ball. I don't know if he's going to find that anywhere else.
And there's some criticism coming out for the general manager, Eric DeCosta, is saying some stuff about the wide receivers in the Ravens group now, and Rashad Bateman's come out. He's not pleased at all about that. He said, how about you play to your player strength and stop pointing the finger at us and Lamar, Bateman said. Here's the thing with me, and I'm a Steelers fan, so I hate the Ravens. That's bred into you from the day the Ravens started their franchise. I'm not so sure, and you may disagree this, and I've said this on the show before. I'm not so sure that Harbaugh is the right fit in Baltimore anymore.
You don't think so?
The whole analytics thing has cost them several games. It cost them the game against Buffalo.
That's true. It did.
Instead of kicking the field goal, putting points on the board, taking the lead in the fourth quarter, you go for it on fourth down. You pretty much said, I don't think my defense can stop Buffalo. So we're going to go for it. Lamar throws an interception. Of course, you guys go down the field, kick a field goal, win the game, which made me a happy man.
That was a fun one this year.
I was a big-time Buffalo fan that day. But, and it's been several times that he's gone against that. He's went with the whole analytics thing, trying to be different. And not saying Harbaugh's not a good coach. I just don't know if he's the right fit in Baltimore anymore.
Well, I have a question just in regards to analytics. If you're just going by the book, what is your purpose that you're serving there? Because anyone can just read out of a book and say,
yeah, that's true.
This is the percentages. But as a coach, you got to just take that information and use it. Like, know what the percentages are, and then apply that to your team. Maybe this isn't the right situation. Maybe this is the right situation. For me, when you talk about analytics in the NFL, there's just not enough sample size. The sample size is too small for everyone to say this is exactly what's going on. It's not baseball. Baseball, there's 162 games a year. This is only 17. Yeah. So it's a completely different scenario.
Yeah. And at a game, I would say this, as a Steeler fan, I hope they keep Harbaugh there because he did the same thing against us the year before. Went for it on fourth down, threw an interception. We got the ball, pretty much sealed the game after that. So, I don't know. As a Baltimore Ravens fan, if I was a Baltimore Ravens fan, I've talked to a few that, they were actually after that, they didn't sweep us this year. They were hoping they were going to sweep against us this year, but of course that didn't happen. But they were saying they kind of agreed about the whole Harbaugh thing. They were sick of Harbaugh, and I don't know if that's the majority or not. But I'm sure it's not. But there's got to be some talk in the Ravens universe that maybe Harbaugh is kind of.
You don't think his Super Bowl championship has bought him enough time there?
Well, he's been to one Super Bowl. He won
one Super Bowl.
He's won a Super Bowl.
It does carry a lot of weight. Coming from a Buffalo fan, it does carry a lot.
This then, if you're going by that, Mike McCarthy, Green Bay.
True. That's
won a
true.
Super Bowl there, and but we all know what happened there.
And we all know what happened there. And did Green Bay make the right decision? Because right now it's not looking so good.
But McCarthy, I don't think McCarthy's the answer in Dallas either. I mean, McCarthy did a few bonehead decisions last year,
I remember
and into the playoffs.
The playoffs.
Yeah, that
was that more McCarthy, or was that Dak just not understanding how much time was left?
I think it's a little bit of both.
It's a year and a half later, we're still talking about that bonehead play.
And the fact, whether he called it or not, that stupid formation they ran against the 49ers, that last play in the playoffs this year, whether he was responsible for it or not, him being the head coach, the fact that he let it go out on the field like that, yeah, you're responsible.
You're responsible for that, because that had to have happened in practice at least once. They didn't just draw it up in the sand.
He didn't just see Ezekiel out there at center and go, "Hey, what are we doing here? We've never done this before." I mean, he's seen it before, or you don't do that in a playoff game and not see it. So, yeah, that was that was interesting to say the least. I was like, "What are they doing?" See, I'm a football coach. I'm a high school football coach, and even I would not have done that. And that there was a call he made. It may have been in the Green Bay game early in the year. He went for it on 4th down. Hadn't really, I mean, it was they went for it quick. And the call they made, I said, even as a high school football coach, I would not have made that call. But that's just me. So let's see here. What else we got? Jaguars are using the franchise tag on Evan Ingram, releasing one of their cornerbacks. And what do you think about Jacksonville? You think they're on the verge, or do you think it's just they're gonna kind of plateau out?
In that AFC South, you never know. It's wide open. I have no confidence in the Colts doing whatever they're planning on doing forward. And the Texans are just completely a joke of a franchise. They have been the entire time. And that just leaves the Titans, who are thinking about getting rid of Derrick Henry, which to me seems like the most ridiculous idea you could possibly have. Although they have run him into the ground over the past 3 years. So maybe they're thinking that there's too many miles on him. I don't know.
Well, they've made some questionable, Malik Willis, the fact they draft him and talk about he's going to be the heir apparent to Ryan Tannehill. But then when Tannehill gets hurt at the end of the year, you don't have enough faith in him to start in a game for the division. That you go out and get a guy from the team 2 weeks before, Josh Dobbs, former Steeler. You get him off a practice squad from another team like a week or two before, and you start him in that game.
Winning your in scenario. Yep, absolutely.
I mean, come on, dude. What is the deal there? You gotta either say, okay, Malik, it's yours, or what do you think that does to his psyche now?
I think if I was him, I'd go to his agent. Get me out of here right now. They don't believe in me. I want to be. If I'm a player, I want to be somewhere where they believe that I can play. If they don't believe in me enough to put me in there when the game's on the line, when the season's on the line, what am I doing here?
Exactly, I agree.
Trade me to Houston.
Now Houston could definitely use him. So. Got some likes up here already. Houston Ball, Chris Bevins. Appreciate you guys liking. We got a couple of people in here watching right now. You listen to the top 10, what's going to be the top 10 favorite Buffalo Bills of all time. So we've covered that. Do you watch much NBA?
I don't watch too much NBA, no.
I used to, and now I was, being from North Carolina, big Michael Jordan fan. Mm-hmm. Of course, I pulled for Chicago when he played, and ever since then he left. And I'm talking about when he left. I watched when he played with the Wizards, came back, played with the Wizards. But ever since that, I've had not much to do with the NBA. LeBron, I'm not a fan of at all. No, anybody that's got to come out and say I'm the greatest NBA player of all time. If you have to say it, then
Well, I think about it this way. Muhammad Ali would say he's the greatest fighter of all time, and maybe that's just something he needed to motivate himself internally. Because
Did
I
you?
think LeBron probably needs motivation right now because he's apparently not showing it on the court. I
He's
don't know.
out. He's out at least 3 weeks now with a
Oh, is that so?
tendon injury. Foot tendon injury. Yeah. I just find it ironic, but anyway, yeah, I don't think
How does
LeBron
that
could have
line up with the
handled.
All-Star break? Does that
He's
line up?
already they've already had the All-Star break,
Oh, they
so
already had the see.
yeah. So
That's how much I watch
this
basketball.
is going into the last part of the season, and they're on the outside looking into the playoffs. So they're not gonna, unless something strange happens, they're not gonna make it. But which is fine with me. But I don't follow it that much. I keep up with like the top stories. It's a joke now. They don't play defense. I mean, it's horrible to watch. But now let's get right to the main
Let's
event.
go to it.
Buffalo Bills. Like, you were born in what year? You said
I was born in 1985.
all right. You're a little bit younger than me. I
So
was
the
born in
Bills are
70.
25 years older than me. They started in 1960, but my list does go all the way back to 1960 because
I have a couple of these guys that, and I think I have some guys on here that might surprise you.
okay,
There's two of them that that might surprise you, but there's some guys from the early '80s teams up here. There's a lot from that 4-year stretch.
from those 90 Super Bowl teams. Those are some great teams.
Okay, we talked a little bit about it. I warned you I was going to ask you this before we get started. Out of those 4 teams that went to the Super Bowl, and unfortunately for you, lost, but which team out of that you think was the strongest team?
I think that 1990 team, that one with Scott Norwood just putting it just past the post in Tampa. That was the team. They had a phenomenal defense. They were firing on all cylinders. They could push everyone around on the line. They started playing the no huddle, and the other teams couldn't catch up with it. They just didn't understand it coming.
K-Gun.
The K-Gun, named after Keith McKellar. I don't know if everyone knows
everybody
that. It's not named after Jim Kelly. It's named after Keith McKellar, one of the tight ends, and that was the sort of the package they lined up for him. So they had the K-Gun there. But I think that 1990 team, if you watch the 91, 92, 93 teams, they're just not quite up to it. Right. They all went to the Super Bowl, but the Super Bowls obviously didn't go their way, and they got progressively worse for them. I mean, the 92 team did have the greatest comeback in now playoff history after that stupid, ridiculous Vikings-Colts
game. Yeah.
It was funny because the Bills were playing that night, so we were driving to the stadium listening to the game, and we're just thinking, what is going on here with Jeff Saturday?
Yeah, and everybody was like, when we do our weekly episodes and we got down to playoff time, people were talking about the Vikings. I was like, no, they're the worst, best team in the NFL out there. And I was like, you lost. You got tore up by Dallas, and you had to come back from 33 points down against the Colts. First of all, why are you down 33 points to the Colts with Jeff Saturday coaching? And that right there. Yes. And I'm like, why are you down that much? You shouldn't be down that much. A good team wouldn't be down to the Colts that much. I know any given Sunday, but no, not 33 points.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was a playoff game. Those Houston Oilers were a great team. This
God.
Indianapolis
Warren
Colts
Moon.
team.
You had Haywood Jeffries. You had Ernest Givens. I mean, you had that offense was like dynamic. I mean, because that was the old AFC Central days when Pittsburgh and Houston were in the AFC Central. I saw Houston enough to be frustrated with them, the House of Pain, which they were playing. And you said your dad went to that game.
He did.
And left you at home.
And left the little 8-year-old me at home, which, I can understand. 8 years old is about the cutoff for going to the stadium there.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the most friendly of confines at Rich Stadium.
Did he say, has he told you, I mean, how many people were leaving the stadium?
see, the game wasn't even sold out. That's
Right.
the thing that people forget about. So there was probably only about 70,000 people there, and maybe half of them left. But they came back into the
Yeah.
stadium, and the security guards at one point just gave up, and people were just walking into the stadium by the end.
I remember watching that, and I was because it was funny to me because I like Buffalo better than I did Houston for sure, and I was like, they're gonna blow this game, and that was but that was typical Houston for that time. Something about those guys, they always, as good a team as they always have, as dynamic as that offense was, they always find a way to choke. And I mean,
Well,
I
you could
didn't
say
think
the
they would
same thing
choke
about my
that
Bills
big.
team.
I didn't think they would choke that big, but yeah, come on, geez. But Buffalo's got of course, one of the legendary coaches in the NFL, Marv Levy, and man, he turned that franchise around
He did.
after struggles through the 80s. He gets them going, and of course, 4 straight Super Bowl. And I mean, no matter what, I mean, win or lose the Super Bowls, to get a team to 4 straight Super Bowls is
It's an
impressive.
accomplishment. It's an accomplishment, and I'm proud of it. And I'm sure everyone who played on those teams is proud of it too. It's something that, I mean, you say will never be done. It probably be done again. Someone eventually is going to do it. Maybe. I don't know.
Time in the NFL, I don't know. There's parity in the NFL right now. I don't know. But I mean, I guess Kansas City, I mean, they've been to the championship game, AFC championship game, what, 4 years in a row?
Mm-hmm.
So
but they haven't won all of them. That's true.
Yeah,
it's tough to do.
Because when you go, even when you go to the Super Bowl, the next year, you got a target on you. Everybody wants to give them get you a best shot, and the fact that Buffalo, because I know we had Buffalo's number a little bit during the regular season. Especially if we played y'all on Monday night. If it was if we played Buffalo on Monday nights, I was like, okay, we have no problem. And I've actually talked to a few Steelers. I've interviewed a few Steelers on here, and that was one of the questions. I think LeVon Kirkland was one of them I asked. I said, Monday Night Football, what was the deal with you guys with Monday Night Football? Because it seemed, he said, man, we were amped up. He said, and especially when we played Buffalo, we were amped up, boy. And I just remember, gosh, what was the guy's name that hit Beebe that night? I honestly thought he had killed Don Beebe that night. You remember that?
I do. Don't remember who it would have been, but Beebe has taken just so many hits. And of course, the pogo stick hit against Cleveland in '89 is probably the most famous. They played that nonstop on all the blooper reels.
Yeah, of course, Beebe. I had Beebe on the show. I got to interview Don Beebe. He was a great guy.
Coach Beebe, he's doing pretty well for himself.
Yes, he sure is. He sure is. And that was when he was getting ready to start with the coaching deal when I interviewed him. So, yeah, great guy. So let's get right into it.
Sure.
And since you're the guest, let me get down here so I can get your list. I'm going to let you start with your number 10.
Well, my number 10 is one of my favorites. It's Albert Dubinion, Golden Wheels from the AFL days.
Wow.
He is an original Bill. And I pulled this stat because this is the most amazing stat I've ever seen. In 1964, the Bills AFL championship year, he averaged 27.1 yards per reception.
Jeez.
And that wasn't just a few receptions. He had over 1,000 yards, and he was averaging 27 yards a catch, which is just absurd.
That is.
No one does that.
No.
But he was such a fast player. And when I go back and when I started doing this, my goal was to try to see every Bills game ever. And when I go back watching the tapes or film strips from the 60s, he's just so much faster than everyone else on the field. He just flies through, and it's just so much fun watching him.
How did this guy not become like more of a household name?
Because he was in the AFL. He went to Bluffton College, so a small school no one ever heard of. The Bills gave him a shot, and he just stuck around. And he was just one of the fastest guys in the league, and he was just a wonderful flanker. So he's my starting flanker on my all-time Bills team.
I got you. So my number 10, and I remember when I first started watching, you're old enough to watch. That was probably like 78 or 79 when I started remembering games. This guy was already entrenched with the Bills then at quarterback. And then it's number 12, Joe Ferguson.
Joe Ferguson. All
Joe
right.
Ferguson with the
Arkansas rifle.
Yeah, the double bar
two
helmet.
bars.
Yeah, like they had
Same
back
expression walking off the field.
Yeah, exactly. But it was Joe Ferguson was tough. I mean, that guy took some beatings, but he always got back up. They were, I think they actually was it 82 when they had the strike year that they made the playoffs that year.
They didn't make playoffs. They made the playoffs in 80 and 81.
81. Okay, it was 81 they made it that year. And I remember watching them play in the playoffs, and I was like, who is this guy? Ferguson, Joe Ferguson. This is a tough dude. And then, of course, he goes on as he stays there for what? I think he was there 12 years, 73 to 84.
Yep.
Goes with the Lions, and he was probably one of the worst hits I've ever seen in football. Wilbur Marshall hit him for the Bears, hit him as the Lions. And, I mean, even Joe Ferguson couldn't get up from that, as tough as he was. But Joe Ferguson, like you said, number 12.
Yep.
And, I mean, probably not the most famous number 12 in Buffalo, of course. But,
for those who saw him, he is beloved as number 12. He's the original number 12.
Definitely. I mean, that's one guy that I think he didn't have the success there at Buffalo that Kelly, of course, had. But he is an iconic quarterback for Buffalo for me.
He had the misfortune of playing in the same division as those great Miami Dolphins teams of the 70s.
Yeah.
And the Dolphins went 20-0 against the Bills in the 70s. The Bills did not win a game against the Dolphins, and it was impossible to win the division. They went to one playoff. They had one wild card playoff appearance in the 70s. That was it. That was the list, because those Dolphins teams were just killing.
Yeah, Shula had the Dolphins going pretty well then. But yeah, number 10 for me, Joe Ferguson. Let's get to your number 9.
It's number 9. This is a little out there, but number 9, I'm a big fan of the 3-4 defense. And if you're playing a 3-4, you need a nose tackle who can just stand over the center and just push people around. And that's why I'm going with Big Ted Washington, one of my favorite players of all time. He was only on the Bills for 7 years. I think he had like a 14-year career, but his longest stay was on the Bills in those mid to late 90s teams. And I still, to this day, with that stupid home run throw up, that 99 Bills team that lost to the Titans in the Music City Miracle, they had the best defense I had ever seen. And it was anchored by Ted Washington and Bruce Smith, who we'll get to, I'm sure, in a little bit. And they would just push people around. It was fantastic to watch. That's why I love Ted Washington, one of the best players in Bills history.
There's something else I want to talk about that Music City Miracle game, but we'll get to that in just a little bit.
Okay.
We got some comments coming in. Robert Matthews, I don't know what damn right what you were responding to. Let me know what you respond to. And of course, my co-host, usually Matthew, he's up. He said, "What's up, y'all? How y'all doing? What's up, Matthew?" So Ted Washington, number 9.
I bet you weren't expecting that one.
No, but that's the thing. Oh, yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
Robert Matthews is a Dolphins fan, so he was saying damn right to the Dolphins.
They were. I'll admit when we're outclassed. They were the class of that AFC East.
So my number 9, he's out of Chadron State, and a former guest of the show. We just talked about a few minutes ago. Don Beebe. I mean, you're talking about a guy that comes in from a little small college, drafted in round 3. And I remember, because back then, and I still have it, I think somewhere, football cards. I had a pretty good collection of football cards. And when they started getting back, was his rookie year when they started putting out NFL cards again. And he tells this story that his rookie card, it was an NFL Pro Set rookie card, they didn't have any pictures of him, so they had to get a picture out of like the program from Chadron State, and you can tell it looked so different than everybody. Like with the rookie class that year had Barry Sanders, Troy Aikman, Deion Sanders, Derek Thomas, and theirs are like real slick looking. And he's got an action picture, and it's barely even showing. You can't see the front of him. He's catching the ball, and it's kind of blurry. But yeah, I mean, but Don Beebe, I mean, I think the iconic play in the first Super Bowl against
27, running down Leon Lett. It's just the perseverance. He just exemplified the perseverance of those teams. Right there, that play was those teams that they didn't have any quit in them. They even when they were getting rolled up by Dallas, they were still
because that game was out of reach at the time, and he had no reason to go down there, and except pride, and he was not going to let that guy do that. And I gained so much respect for Don Beebe that day. And of course, we talked about before we went on there the whole pogo stick. Landing on his head, and unfortunately, he does not get a Super Bowl all his years. And then he does
get a Super Bowl in Green Bay, though.
Yeah, he went to play the 2 years he was at Green Bay. Played in two more Super Bowls. So this guy played in six Super Bowls. How many? I mean, how many guys get to play in 6 Super Bowls? He got one, of course, but man, and he was always. For Kelly and whoever the quarterback was, he was always that dependable receiver that when you needed, of course you had Andre Reed. That was the guy. He was the star.
He is the guy. He is. There's no doubt about it.
He's the man. But when you needed somebody to go across that middle and get those tough yards, Don Beebe was the guy he went to. I mean, you had James Lofton was there. Eric Moulds was there later on.
Right.
But Don Beebe was the guy that you went to across the middle when he needed tough yards. And he got my total respect for that. Don Beebe is my number 9. So, number 8 for you.
Number 8 for me. We were talking about it before the show and how much I love guards, and guards are underrated. That's why I'm going with Reuben Brown, the 8-time Pro Bowler, as one of my favorite Buffalo Bills of all time. He just added so much to that offensive line. And he was there. He came in 95, and he started as a rookie, and he just blew people away. And he was just a fantastic player. So that's why Reuben Brown is my number 8.
So you're going in the interior on both sides now. I got you. I just played high school ball, but I played offensive, defensive line. And I coach now, and I tell the guys on the line, especially the offensive line, the only time you're going to get any kind of notoriety or any notice in you is when you screw up.
Is when you get one of these thrown on you. Absolutely. If you're doing your job, no one notices you, and that's the hardest thing to do. That's the hardest thing to do for some people. But guys like Reuben Brown and guys like we'll get on this list a little later, they don't need the notoriety.
No, I mean, you have to take it like who you're blocking for, what they do, like a Thurman Thomas or whoever's in that backfield, what Kelly can do, how clean Kelly or that quarterback can stay. That's what you've got to say. When those guys get in the newspaper, that's what you've got to say. Hey, if it wasn't for me, they wouldn't be in that
Brown made Travis Henry a Pro Bowler. So if you make Travis Henry a Pro Bowler, then you are opening up some big holes there.
Yes. So my number 8 is another wide receiver, and we just talked about him. We called him the man, Andre Reed. I mean, what was the deal with the Bills getting these small school wide receivers? I mean,
Touchdown
State. And then, he comes in, selected in the 85 draft in the 4th round. He was just the second player ever to be picked from Kutztown State. Who was the other one? Let's see. Don Shaver. You ever heard of him? 1981.
Everyone's heard of Don Shaver, sure.
Yeah, right. Of course. I remember him, yeah. But, he goes on, Andre goes on, 7-time Pro Bowler. He's a member of
1,300 yards receiving.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
He's 15th all-time He's
Yeah,
15th all
he's
time
on
in
my
touchdown
list,
receptions.
so we'll get.
I'm sure we'll talk about him a little bit later. I was kind of let's see, he was just kind of down on my list, but he gets cut later on. Spends 1 year in Denver, and then 1 year with the Redskins, of course, when Dan Snyder was trying to retread everybody. He was getting, I think,
Well, he had Bruce on the
Bruce
team.
Smith was there. Dion was
Deion
there.
Sanders.
Yeah, it did not work. It didn't work out for him. But Andre Reed, I mean, I just remember, and this is a bad memory for you. One of the biggest memories I remember of him is the Super Bowl with Washington, where he doesn't get a pass interference call and
He
takes the helmet up and slams it down, just makes things worse. But I mean, that was Jim Kelly's go-to guy.
He
I
was.
mean, we talked about BB being the guy you go across the middle, but big play, he's going to Andre Reed. And Andre Reed was definitely worthy of that big play guy. But Hall of Fame, gets inducted in the Hall of Fame 2014. At the time he retired, he was second in receptions. So, I mean, the guy's got a pedigree there, and he had some great years. He's had some great years in Buffalo. Of course, he was a part of those 4 Super Bowl teams there too. And you're going to see that a lot on my list too. But yeah, Andre Reed's my number 8. So I'm sure we'll be talking about him a little bit later for you.
He was a little later on my list, but we'll talk about it. I'll go to my number 7 though, and we'll stay with the wide receiver theme. But this guy was a wide receiver who never got to play his position because he was too valuable as a special teamer, and that would be Steve Tasker. Steve Tasker is, in my mind, a Hall of Famer. He's getting kept out of the Hall of Fame because they don't value his position. And if you're telling me he's the greatest gunner of all time, why aren't you putting him in the Hall of Fame? Why, you're just telling me you're valuing one position less than another. And I think that's just wrong. And
I agree.
He's talented enough where he could have been a starting wide receiver if he wanted to. But his best position on that field was as the special teams captain. And I don't know how you can hold that against him.
I mean, and I'll go ahead and let the cat out of the bag. We'll talk about him a little bit later in the list. But I'm like this with you, with what you just said. The fact that this guy is not in the Hall of Fame is ridiculous. I mean, because this was a guy, I guess the first really noticeable special teams player was Bill Bates for the Cowboys for me. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he played safety, but there was another one, and I'm trying to remember this guy's name, and I should be ashamed of myself because I interviewed him, but he played for the Chargers. He played special teams. Gosh knows, I ought to be ashamed of myself for not knowing, but I'll come up with it. But this is the guy, and he is pushing for a lot of these guys, special teams guys, to be considered for the Hall of Fame. He was one of them that played every play, did all this, and Tasker's one of them. There, you look at all the attention Slater's getting from the Patriots now. Mm-hmm. He's been there almost 17 years now, and talking about coming back now. But you got to remember, Tasker was really the first really noticeable guy that day. And Tasker would put a hit on you too.
He sure would.
I mean, and I don't know if is he still doing some broadcast work now?
He's doing the local sort of team show that they have here.
He is doing, because I remember he was working for CBS one time.
Yeah, he was doing the games for CBS. Now he's doing sort of a daily show.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. But yeah. So that's your number 7 is Tasker. Like I said, we'll talk a little bit about him later on in my list. But for right now, and I'm going to go back again to the early 80s, and we're going to go to a running back, Joe Cribbs.
Give the ball to Cribbs.
Give the ball to Cribbs. I mean, I can honestly say, like I said, I'm a Pittsburgh fan, but between Ferguson and Cribbs, they were two guys that and collecting cards. I always I knew those names, and when I hear them on TV, because back then I'm from a small town, we didn't get but 3 channels. So if you got to see some different teams every once in a while, it was great. I just pretty much had to go by what I read.
Mhm.
And what came out of Auburn, had some great years with the Bills. Of course, I think he finished up. He ended up. He actually went to USFL and then
He
came
did.
back.
He took the money to go to USFL. That was the thing. We were talking earlier about that 82 team and the strike team. Once the USFL came about, he asked for a raise and he wasn't getting the raise that he wanted. So he took the money and he went to the USFL. And that really hurt those Bills teams.
Yeah. Well, and I remember seeing the USFL back in the day and seeing a lot of these NFL players going over for that reason. They got more money. The USFL, as little time as it was there, they got paid. And
They did. It's not like the USFL now. People thinking that it's sort of the same. It was a rival league. It was trying to be what the AFL was in the 60s. It was going after the NFL, trying to be an equal.
And they were drafting players that, whether they decided to go there.
Played in the USFL.
Yeah. Jim Kelly played in the USFL, the Houston Gamblers. I mean, I remember Kelly making the comment about, what did he say that time about he'd rather play in Houston than go play in the cold in Buffalo or something
absolutely.
Like that?
Yeah, when he drafted him in '83, he didn't want to come to Buffalo.
No.
Why not? He got more money going to the USFL.
Exactly.
He actually had an interesting contract in the USFL where he had to be the 3rd highest player in the league. So no matter what. So when other guys would come in and get raises, he'd get a raise automatically.
But yeah, Joe Cribbs, and it talks a little bit about Cribbs signed with the Birmingham Stallions and a contract worth $3.5 million, which was back then that was a big contract.
Yep.
And the Bills challenged the contract, so they had first right of refusal. But of course, Cribbs where it goes and plays, comes back to the NFL in '85, plays with the 49ers for a couple of years, finishes his career as a Dolphin.
He finishes as a Dolphin. In 1990, he played against those 90 Bills.
I always talk about how you put a guy in a different uniform, how weird it looks. One of the first ones I remember was Franco Harris when he left Pittsburgh and went to Seattle.
Yep.
Wore 34 in Seattle. And then I look at some others like Art Monk when he finished his career with the Eagles. And, how weird did it have to be to see Joe Cribbs in a freaking Miami Dolphin jersey?
There was a weirder Bills running back in a Miami Dolphins jersey.
Oh, yes, for sure. Yes, that was weird too. That I forgot all about that, but yeah, that was really weird. But yeah, number 7 for me is Joe Cribbs.
All right, and I'll go to my number 6 and going back to those AFL days. And one of my favorite players that I've seen is Butch Bird, who still to this day has the Bills record with 40 interceptions. No one else is within, like 25 is the next most. He had 40 interceptions in, I think it was 7 years playing for the Bills, which is incredibly impressive. He should have been the 1965 AFL championship game MVP, because in that the championship game, he returned a 74-yard punt for a touchdown and had an interception. He just had a brilliant game, which when they just dominated the Chargers. It's one of my favorite games to watch. So Butch Bird is my number 6.
Who got the MVP of that game?
The MVP ended up going to Jack Kemp, who completed 8 passes.
And here, the reason I asked you that was because this past Super Bowl, and we're going to get a little off track for a minute. I don't know if you'll agree with me or not, but I did not think Patrick Mahomes deserved MVP.
Probably not. No. Who would you?
I mean, he had less than 200 yards passing. He had 3 touchdowns, but the last 2 touchdowns were all made by the Chiefs receivers, and by the stupidity of the Eagles defensive backs, assuming that receiver was going to keep going in motion and going right with him. I mean, me and you both could have thrown those last 2 touchdown passes. I mean,
I don't know about me. I'll give you it, but I don't know about me.
No, I'm saying you could have, dude. Those guys were so open. All you had to do was like just throw it in his direction, and it was going to happen. That I thought, if they were going to give it to anybody, it should have been Kadarius Toney, because the punt return, and he was one of those touchdowns. That punt return pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a Desmond Howard type situation, like how I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, I mean, everybody is, and nothing against Mahomes. I don't have anything against Mahomes, but I think you're going to see in the next couple of years, Mahomes become a disliked quarterback simply because Brady is gone, and the NFL has to push somebody up there to take his place. And
Nature abhors a vacuum, I guess.
Exactly,
there you go.
Exactly. And, when they're pushing him out there, Chris Sims, I don't know if you ever listened to Chris Sims, made me sick the week before and the week after the Super Bowl, because he called Patrick Mahomes the best sports athlete in professional sports today. And I'm like, no. And he was just talking. I mean, it was just total kissing butt for Mahomes. What's up, David? I'm looking at some of the comments coming in late now. I'm sorry, guys. But what's up, David? And Robert Matthews, the Dolphins fan, is, we have a small college close by to us. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you remember former Bills coach Lou Saban.
Of course I do. I love those 65 Bills.
Yeah,
he
was
a championship coach.
Yeah, he coached at that small school over here at Chowan University in Murfreesboro, North Carolina. Yeah, Robert's also saying those 2 guys that Mahomes threw the last 2 touchdowns were more open than a $2 shirt. And he's good. He's saying also he's going to be the next Brady. So yeah, I think he's going to be pushed to where, people are just going to say, hey, you're pushing this on me. You're pushing this guy up on me. I don't want to see him that much. There's no quarterback. I don't care. Ben Roethlisberger, love him to death. I would not want him to be pushed so much in front of everybody, like, he's just shoved down your throat. And I'm sure you're that way about Josh Allen too. But, come on, give me a break. So you're number 6, Butch Bird, another AFL guy. My number 6 is a repeat. We've already talked about him. I mean, what more can you say about him? Should be in the Hall of Fame. Steve Tasker.
Steve Tasker. He should be. I don't know what more you can say. He was a fantastic player. He excelled at his position. For 7 years, he was the Pro Bowler in the AFC for special teams.
Yeah.
He was the best at his position for almost a decade. What more do you want? I don't get it.
The guy's name just came to me right then. I was talking about for the Chargers. That was so good. He wanted pushing for the Hank Bauer.
Okay.
Look up Hank Bauer. Hank Bauer was a big-time special teams player for the Chargers back in those early 80s teams with Dan Fouts, Air Coryell. And he was on the show, and he also said the same thing about special teams guys. They need to get more credit. The guys that make a career out of special teams like Tasker did. Tasker made his name, and Bill Bates. I mean, you got several of them that should be in the Hall of Fame. And in NFL, you need to wise up and realize that there should be a consideration for special teams players. I mean, but Tasker, I mean, gosh, what can you say? We've already talked so much about it. Could lay a hit on you, and very, very knowledgeable. I found that out with him doing the games. Very knowledgeable guy. I mean, and absolutely, like you said, he could have been a good receiver too. And that offense, that K-Gun offense, he could have been a good receiver, but just never got the chance because he was more of a special teams guy. All right. Number 5 for you.
Number 5 for me. I'm wearing the jersey right here. I'll just stand up, show everyone. Other way. Number 67, my favorite. Kent Hull at center, running the show, calling all the blocking plays on the line. He was calling out the plays. It wasn't Kelly calling the line plays. He was calling out all the blocking protections He was running the show. He had Thurman Thomas behind him. He was the one opening up the holes. If you talked about earlier, if you want to know how good a line is, you look at what the running backs are doing.
Exactly.
He only had an MVP behind him, opening up the holes for him. So Kent Hull is my number 5.
Yeah, offensive lineman getting some love today.
I love the offensive line.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Well, we talked about it earlier. Quarterbacks make all the headlines. Wide receivers make all the fun plays. Running backs get the touchdowns. But it's all come down to the offensive line. If you have no offensive line, your quarterback's on the ground. Exactly. You're not even getting that handoff off.
I was told a long time ago when I started playing football, and they put me at center, and the coach asked me, and I'd say it to this day to the guys that play center for me. I asked them, what's the most important position on offense? And all of them will say, like, quarterback. I was like, no. And they'll say running, but no. I said, center. I said, do you understand why? I said, because if you don't get the ball back there to that quarterback and he can't get it to the running back, the play's dead. I mean, if you don't do your job at the center, then the play is dead.
To me, it's kind of like baseball, like a catcher. You got to have that sort of unheralded position, but it's involved in every single play. And if you don't have a good one, you're going to notice it.
Exactly. So, yeah, nothing wrong with some offensive line love. So my number 5, and this is probably going to be a surprise to you, but I, not just as a Bill, but as a player in the NFL, but I think he got a raw deal in Buffalo, and this is another quarterback. And go back to the Music City Miracle game. Talking about Doug Flutie.
I'm surprised to hear that.
I will never understand what prompted, and what's his name that was the coach then?
Oh, it would be Wade Phillips at the time. And I'll tell you exactly what prompted him. It was Ralph C. Wilson. Ralph made the call. And everyone knows it. It's the worst kept secret. Everyone knows Ralph came down and said, you got to start this guy because I'm paying him all this money. I'm not paying Flutie a bunch of money. Flutie was making backup money at the time. He was I can't remember what Johnson got, but he got a big deal coming out of Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And he was the guy. Ralph wanted him to be the guy, and that's what happened. The thing about that game, though, is he won that game.
he had it won, yeah.
He had it won.
But my thing is, you had so much momentum with Flutie. Flutie had them playing. I mean, Flutie got him into playoffs.
Flutie got him into the playoffs. Really, though, that defense got him in the playoffs.
Oh, that's true, too. Yeah, you had a great defense, but still, though, gosh knows. I would never understand. I know the money deal, but as an owner, that your goal is to make, well, unless you're Jerry Jones, your goal is to make it to the Super Bowl and not worry about the money. But
no, one game my dad did take me to was a game in '98 against Jacksonville, and at 4th and 1, down by 4 on the goal line or on the 1 yard line, Flutie runs the naked bootleg, keeps it himself.
I remember that. I remember.
Oh, it was just brilliant. I don't remember that place being any louder than that moment there. It just erupted. It was fantastic.
I've always, I'm a short guy too. I'm 5'6", so Flutie.
I'm 5'7". There we go.
Yeah, Flutie was always, somebody that I can't say looked up to, but ever since the Boston College game, and of course the Thanksgiving game against Miami where he threw the Hail Mary, and I've always liked Flutie, and I just thought you watch that. I guess it was a 30 for 30 they did on the whole deal. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was a documentary they did on it, and see some of the things that went on that season with the quarterback situation. And it's like, well, what is this? Ralph Wilson needs to stay out of it. Just sign the check and let these guys figure out who needs to play where. But yeah.
Well, okay. Why don't we move on to my number 4 then?
There you go.
Stay with another quarterback, which one of my favorite Bills. And he's a current Bill, Josh Allen. How can I leave this guy off the list? He's so much fun to watch.
Yes.
Him jumping over guys, starting with that Minnesota game. And he is just a different player. He is a player out of a video. He's a player you would create if you were making the perfect quarterback in a video game. He can run guys over. He's got a rocket arm. He's seems like a genuinely nice individual. So that's why my number 4 is Josh Allen.
Well, we can go right ahead because both of us got him at number 4. Josh Allen, he's like, I guess what the quarterback should be in the NFL today.
Yeah,
I mean, he can run, and he, like you said, he's got a rocket arm on him. I mean, I think, and you know more about the ins and outs of the Bills this year, that injury probably,
I think so.
You can tell that really affected him. And I mean, it would affect anybody, but especially a quarterback. I think that affected him more the last half of the year. And you saw his touch was a little bit off. But
I think he was protecting himself when he was playing because, and as we were talking about earlier, they don't have the best offensive line.
Exactly.
And the problem there is a big hole on the right side of their offensive line that they just can't seem to fill. They have Spencer Brown over there playing right tackle. He doesn't seem to be the answer. I don't know. He's a giant, but he might be too big because these guys are running around him. He's not keeping Allen upright. And so I think that could have been some of the issue this year.
Let's talk a little bit while we're on the subject of the team this year. And you're around it. I mean, I'm sure you go to some games. The whole Hamlin deal. I mean, when that happened that night. And of course, I will tell you this, and I mean, I don't like to bring politics or religion into anything, but I'm a devout Christian. The fact that if anything good came out of the whole Hamlin thing, the fact that people were getting on Twitter or social media saying, pray for Hamlin, pray for Hamlin. And it just seemed like everybody came together. And Lord, I would not wish that on anybody, what happened that night. But the fact that kid came out of that and is doing as well as he is now, it's shocking.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. It was heartwarming to see that everyone had the same supportive reaction.
Yeah.
Because everything now is just so incredibly cynical.
Exactly. It is terrible, bud.
And for some, I mean, it's a shame that it was something so tragic, or it could have been so tragic.
It could have been a lot worse. Yeah.
Yes. So everyone was just, and I think just the relief that was felt around the city, because see that everyone was talking about it. Every single person, that was all that was on anyone's mind around here. And the fact that he was able to weeks later be walking around is just incredible.
Yeah, I can't, that night when it happened, I wasn't watching when it happened, but my football team, we have like a little Snapchat group, and my phone started lighting up. Saying, are you guys seeing this? And I was like, what are you talking about? And I turned it on, and I'm like, holy crap. I mean, just a freak accident. I mean, you who knows if you'll ever see anything like that happen again. But the fact that like you said, he's able to walk around now, and it was on the field during the Super Bowl, incredible. It's just, and will he ever play football again? Who knows?
I think he's got more important things on his mind. That he raised a whole bunch of money, and hopefully he's just. I think that's his path forward. He's going to take that and do good in the world with it, and I hope him nothing but the best.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the guy was an inspiration to a lot of people. But yeah, Josh Allen is definitely my number 4. I don't know if I'm sure you do remember. What was your feelings when they drafted him? Because there was kind of some controversy.
I am the eternal optimist. So, of course, when I drafted him, I'm like, yeah, all right, we got a quarterback now. But I said the exact same thing about J.P. Lossman, about Trent Edwards. I said the same thing about Jeff Toole. Like, I can convince myself that any Bills quarterback is going to be the next quarterback. So when that happened, I was on board. Why not? It could work, and it ended up working.
Yeah, it's worked out pretty well for you guys. But yeah, you guys have had some quarterbacks like between Bradshaw and Roethlisberger for us. I always tell people, the last couple years we had Roethlisberger, they were like, he needs to go. He needs to go. I'm like, you guys be careful what you wish for, because do you not remember what we had between Bradshaw and, I mean, I can name.
You had some Neil O'Donnell.
Neil
Bubby
O'Donnell.
Brister.
He was the best quarterback the Cowboys could buy off in the Super Bowl. I mean, then it was, let's see, Cordell Stewart,
Slash.
Kent Graham. Let's see, Bubby Brister, Cliff Stout, Mark Malone.
That's right.
David Woodley. You remember him from the Dolphins. And then, let's see, we even had Todd Blackledge.
You had Mark Maddox or Tommy Maddox.
Tommy Maddox was there. He was the last one before Ben.
XFL champion.
And you know what? When Tommy came in, though, for Cordell struggled. Cordell frustrated me because every other year, Cordell would have a good year, really good year. And everybody was like, this is the turning point for Cordell. Then the next year, he sucked. And then it finally got to where when Tommy came in and they, it was like wide open offense. And I was like, holy crap. And then that kind of fizzled out. But then, of course, Roethlisberger came in. I was like, what the heck is a Roethlisberger? when we draft, because I honestly, Phillip Rivers went to NC State, which is close by to me. I was like, I hope we get Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, unfortunately, didn't drop to you. I was hoping for Roethlisberger, actually, because was the year we got JP Lossman.
Oh, yeah. I bet you were wishing you had Roethlisberger after that. Good Lord. Where is JP Lossman at now?
I believe he's coaching somewhere now. It's good for him.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Go then. Yeah, sometimes people are better coaches than quarterbacks, I guess. I hope he is there. Number 3 for you.
My number 3, we already talked about him. He's Andre Reed. He's the Hall of Famer. He's got 1,300 yards. He's the Bills leader in every single receiving category. He's just fantastic. What more can I say about him?
Yeah, definitely. I'm kind of curious at your top 2 now, because there's
one. Yeah,
somebody's getting left out.
Someone got left off, and
somebody's getting left out. I'm kind of wondering.
You're probably going to talk about him right now.
I know one of them didn't get left off because you already talked about that. So I think it's between 2 of them. But my number 3, and this may be one of them got left off for you. Thurman Thomas. I looked at him. I guess I did, like I said, having 3 channels and not having ESPN back at that time. When Thurman came on the scene, I didn't really know a lot about him until the playoffs, that especially that first year with the Giants Super Bowl. And let's go ahead and say it right now. Norwood makes that kick.
He's the MVP.
Thurman Thomas is the MVP.
Absolutely.
He carried the ball the second half, especially second half against that Giants defense. And he was all over the place. He was catching passes. And that's what I liked about Thurman. Thurman could catch out of the backfield, but and if he is the only reason I can think that he may not be on your list.
I'll spoil it right now. He's on my list. Okay. Don't worry.
I was going to say the only
reason I love Thurman Thomas. I'll spoil it right now. He's going to be my number 1. He's the best. I love Thurman Thomas. I'm glad you brought him up. I mean, he's the 91 MVP. You said catching the ball. He led the league 4 straight years in yards from scrimmage.
Exactly.
Catching and receiving and totally he could do anything. He could have been a wide receiver had he wanted. He could have lined up outside and he could have been a 1,000-yard receiver, but he had that line that he was running behind. Oh, he's just fantastic.
The only drawback I have about Thurman, and he's tough. He was tough, but sometimes he let people get in his head. I've seen some games where he and look, the whole thing, I don't know what was going on. That first play of the Super Bowl against Washington where he didn't know where his helmet was.
The helmet, yeah.
Oh,
I don't know either. I'm too afraid to ask him too. He follows me on Twitter, but I don't dare ask him.
He follows you on Twitter?
That was one of the coolest things ever when I saw that. Yeah, I was going to say
that's got to be like freaking cool for you, dude.
Yeah, I had this guy's poster on my wall growing up, and then all of a sudden I see this little check mark. I'm like, what? Wait, no way. No way.
That
I
is awesome
absolutely
there.
took a screenshot. Sure, I did. It was the
Look,
coolest thing in the world.
I will tell you this story. We're getting off the Bills thing. We'll get on the Steelers thing for a little while. I've interviewed a lot of Steelers, and I mean, I'll interview any NFL player that But there was a guy I interviewed, and his name was Richard Shelton. He played a couple years for the Steelers in the secondary, and this was around the early '90s. And we had a good conversation. And near the end of it, I was thanking him, and he was like, "Well, you're a member of the family now, dude. You got my number." He said, "You call." He said, "I'll even help you get some more Steelers." And I'm kind of guy like I don't like bothering people. I don't want to feel like I'm a bother. But this time I was like, I'm gonna hold you to it. And when the interview was over, I called him, and the first time it went to voicemail. So the second time he picks up. And I just thanked him again for the interview, and I wanted him to bring up the other Steelers, and he did. And it was like he said, I was telling you about those other Steelers, getting you some more Steelers. He said, I got one on the line right now. He said, well, you're on a 3-way call right now. I said, with who? He said, Rod Woodson. And I was like, stop lying.
Only Rod Woodson, yeah.
Stop lying. And he was like, and all of a sudden you hear Rod Woodson say, hey, buddy, how you doing? I was like, is this really Rod Woodson? He said, well, that's not my real name, but, you can call me Rod. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? And that guy was like, yeah, he just interviewed me. We had a great conversation. And I stepped right in, too. And I would love to have you on the show, Mr. Woodson. He said, well, let him get you my information, and you get in touch with me. So Text him. Months go by, don't hear nothing. 5:30 in the morning, my phone goes off text, and it's Rod Woodson. Hey, buddy, you still want to do that interview? And I was like, I can't right now.
But I love the internet. The internet's the greatest place in the world. There's no way this would have happened without it.
It's just like you said, having the guy that you had a post on while he's following you on Twitter now, talking to some of these Steelers guys that I sat there and watched play and I pulled for, and I was like, it's so surreal to be able to do that.
It is.
And,
it really is.
It's freaking awesome. So, yeah, Thurman, number 3 for me. So I'm just curious to see who's going to get left out the list.
Well, you can figure it out after this, because my number 2 is the all-time leader in sacks, the one and only Bruce Smith. It's 171 sacks as a Bill, 200 total. You know who I left off.
Oh, wow. Wow, dude.
Did I make a statement by doing that?
Yes, you did.
We can talk about who I left off, because I left Jim Kelly off my list.
Well, I'll be talking about him in a minute.
So. Well, why don't we go? We can go right to Jimbo. Why not?
So
is he your number 2?
Bruce is my number 2.
Bruce, let's talk about Bruce, then we'll talk about Jim. But Bruce, I mean, what more can you say? He could get off the ball faster than anyone I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
It's like he could predict the snap. He knew when the snap was coming before the center knew when the snap was coming. It was something to watch. He had that quickest first step you could, and he was just a massive human being. And I'm a season ticket holder. Sometimes he'll be walking around the concourse, and you know exactly it's Bruce Smith, because he is just such a large human being. It's fantastic. So he's my number 2. He's your number 2 as well?
Yeah, I would say this about him. As big as he was, to be as quick as he was, that was scary. And, people don't talk about how tough he was, because I remember Steelers playing them I think it was a Monday night game, and he did something to his arm. I don't know what he did, but he was on the sideline in extreme pain. The next possession, that dude's back out there on the field, and he's still pressuring the quarterback. I mean, with one arm, and you don't see a whole lot of that. But Bruce Smith, he's Virginia Tech, first pick in the draft. Definitely, probably one of the best, if not the best draft pick the Buffalo Bills have ever had.
I think so. I think he's probably the best draft pick he is. Yeah, of the Bills. Although my number 1, if we're going to move on, is Thurman Thomas.
Yeah, I know.
Who slipped to the second round, because the Bills in 1988 didn't have a first round pick. Anyone could have had Thurman Thomas. and no one chose him. He fell to the Bills, and he is my favorite player of all time. And I don't know what more to say. He's the MVP. He led the league, like I said, 4 years from scrimmage. He is the Bills' all-time rushing leader, and the Bills have had some pretty good running backs.
Yeah.
So Thurman Thomas is my number one, leaving off your number one, which is.
Oh man, I can't believe he left Jim Kelly.
I mean, I left Jim Kelly off because here's the thing. I like Jim Kelly. Everyone likes Jim Kelly, but he's a quarterback. And I think the quarterback position's a little overrated.
Okay.
And he also had 2 Hall of Fame wide receivers and a Hall of Fame running back. So I think that helps you
it helps.
Better of a player. If you have James Lofton and Andre Reed on one side, you have Thurman Thomas in the backfield, you have Howard Baylor at the right tackle and Will Wolford at left. You have my guy Kent Hall at center, Jim Richard, who we were talking about playing guard. Like, he had a great team, and we just couldn't get over the hump.
I got a question for you though.
Yes,
that helps, right? That helps. Okay, let's put JP Lossman at quarterback. What do you guys do then?
We finished 8-8 or 7-9 probably, but then we talked about we put a Josh Allen back there behind center.
Oh yeah, if Josh
Allen,
all
of a sudden we're talking a different story, I think.
But Kelly, Kelly's my number one. He's a Pennsylvania guy. You know, that helps a lot. He was a Steelers fan, but I will say this about Kelly. Kelly was tough. I mean,
no one could question his toughness. He was
fiery. He was fiery too. I mean, I saw him get in Chad Brown's face one night over and over again because Chad Brown was giving him a fit, but he was getting in his face every chance he could. But you know, and like you said, the whole K gun offense, everybody always assumed it's Kelly gun. No, it's not. It's Keith McKellar. But I don't think you could have put many. Well, I don't know. I would say this Frank Reich did pretty good at times in that.
He did.
But Kelly was the right fit for that team.
He was.
I don't think you put many other quarterbacks in that situation with that team, and they have as much success as the Bills did then.
They don't. And I think that not enough is said about how he and Marv Levy got together to figure out that offense.
Yeah.
They figured out what was going to work best for them, because that wasn't going to work best for any other team running the no huddle. But for that team, what they had and who they had, they maximized their potential, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was, you know, sometimes things just fit, and unfortunately it didn't fit all the way, but sometimes things just fit. And that was one of them. Now, let me ask you this. Let's say Norwood makes that field goal.
Yes.
Do we see a different Buffalo Bills outcome for the next, you know, are we talking about a dynasty?
I don't know. That's a good question. Do they make it the next year? Maybe not. Maybe there is a Super Bowl letdown. I think that those teams could have been fueled by that hunger to try to keep getting back there, and winning. It's hard to repeat. So I think you're probably right in that aspect that I don't know if they get to 4 straight if they win that first Super Bowl. I don't think that happens.
I think that motivated them a lot. You know, the fact that, you know, we want to get back there. We want to prove everybody wrong. And then, you know, you get to it next year and you lose, and we want to get back and prove everybody wrong. And I honestly think the last Cowboys Super Bowl, which was the last Super Bowl they made, Thurman Thomas does not fumble that ball that gets taken back for a touchdown. I know there's ifs everywhere, but
sure,
that was a big if play right there.
They went into that halftime up. They were leading and going into halftime. If Thurman holds on to that ball, probably I mean, it's definitely a closer final than it was.
Closer game than what it ended up being. 30, I think it was 30-13. But yeah, that play right there was a backbreaker.
I'm looking at the chat, and no, Robert, I have not gone through one of the flaming tables.
Oh, you see it? Okay.
Yeah, I can see the chat coming up too. It is fun though, because that's a real thing at One Bills Drive. That is 100% a real thing. It's not made up. people are going through tables every week like they're the Dudley Boys. It is
The Dudley Boys. Oh my gosh. Are you a wrestling fan too?
Of course I'm a wrestling fan. Why wouldn't I be?
Yeah, I'm a diehard wrestling fan from way back, but I was not you being up north, you were probably more of a WWF fan.
I was a WWF ECW fan, absolutely, because I was up in the Northeast here.
Yeah. We're down here in Crockett land, so Flair and Dusty and all those guys back in the day, and then Robert is a big wrestling fan as well. Got to ask you this because it kind of concerned me, and I'm not even a Bills fan, but it kind of concerned me, and I don't know if it's kind of died down. Robert saying Raven was the man. Don't quote.
I was more of an RVD guy.
Okay. But maybe it's died down a little bit now because, not being in that area. The whole deal with Stephon Diggs on the sidelines with Allen and after the game.
I see no problem with it. I mean,
right.
Diggs is a passionate guy. Allen is a cool guy. Allen doesn't get hot, which you don't want your quarterback to get hot. I mean,
no.
I don't want my quarterback to get hot. And Diggs, he's fiery. I want to see that out of my wide receiver. He wants the ball. He wants the ball in every single play. And so what's wrong with that? He's going to get the ball. He's not going to get the ball as much as he wants, but no wide receiver ever gets the ball as much as they want.
Well, I can tell you this. Every wide receiver out there is always wide open, no matter how quick. They'll always go back to the quarterback. I was wide open on that play. Why didn't you throw it to me? And even though I've heard him talk, I forgot who it was talking about, and it may have been Roethlisberger. Say it was Roethlisberger and Heath Miller. Heath Miller would never say he said he was the only receiver that would never say I was wide open on that play. Everybody else would come back. They'd be in double coverage. I was wide open. He said, and Roethlisberger said, I would see the pictures and Heath was wide open. He said he would go to Heath and say, well, you were wide open that play. Yeah, but I played quarterback in high school. I didn't want to bother you with that. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know if things had died down with that whole situation or not because they were kind of making a deal out of it for a while.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a no deal. I think that's gone away.
So no trade request from Diggs or anything.
No, they'll be back. Those two, they'll be back. And I mean, Diggs, he tied the Bills' record for most receiving touchdowns in the season with 11. So I think he's getting the ball enough, and he's going to be okay. I think everything's going to be fine. It was probably one of the craziest years that the Bills had. They went through so much this year, and they ran out of gas. What are you going to do?
The gas
too soon, and the amount of emotion they were playing with after, like we talked about earlier, the Hamlin injury.
Yeah,
it's hard to recover from that, and I can understand them running out of gas.
Yeah. All right, outlook for next year.
Outlook for next year is the outlook I have for every year. Next year, they're going to win the Super Bowl. They're going to win the Super Bowl. Of course they are. I'm such a homer. There are Bills fans who are always ultra pessimistic. Not me. I always think they're going to end up winning. And as long as they have 17 under center, they have a chance.
Yeah. Do you think? What are you looking for in the draft?
I'm looking for help on the offensive and defensive line because that's just the kind of guy I am. They need to get someone in there who can just push people around. Mitch Morse at center, he's getting a little older. They need a new plan for that. And they could really use someone in the middle, a run stuffer on the defensive line, just some big guy who can just soak up bodies and just disturb the running game. That's what I'm looking for.
You guys resign Edmonds?
I don't think so. I think he walks.
Think he's gone?
I think him and Poyer are gone.
So that's going to be a big hit on that defense there.
It is.
Okay. Can Gabe Davis continue and make himself a viable threat on the other side of Diggs?
I think he can. He's shown he has the ability to. He had a 95-yard reception this year, followed by another touchdown against the Steelers where he basically just ripped it out of the free safety's hands.
Yeah.
He has the potential.
Very well. Yeah, very well. I remember that one.
That was an interception.
Yeah.
And he has strong hands. I think he might have been playing injured as well this year. And I think the Allen injury might have had something to do with that as well.
Probably. Are you seeing Robert's
I'm seeing
latest
this.
comment that
Who was I know exactly who you're talking about. There was a guy if you watch the ECW, and it's on Peacock right now. If you have Peacock, you can go back and watch some of the old episodes. There's a guy who's in the front row of every episode, and he kind of looks like Dude Love, but a little skinnier. And he's got the glasses and the long hair, and you just do a double take every single time because. What does this guy just go to every show? Yeah, of course he goes to every. That's all he does. People do that.
So we're gonna have to bring you back on.
Sure.
Bring you back on and do some wrestling talk. You know, of course, we love doing that. But thank you so much for coming on, dude. I mean, it's always great to hear to talk to somebody with a lot of football knowledge. Tell us a little bit about. I see the name, and you were telling me because today we were talking. I said, "Man, I don't even know what your name is," and you were telling me about it. Should be an apostrophe up there.
It should be an apostrophe, yes. Because one of my passions in life, I'm bringing it out right here. These guys here, a little public service announcement. If you have these tapes, they're dying. They have a finite lifespan, and it's about 25 years. And that 25 years is about up right now. So if you have tapes, send them to someone who can digitize them. Send them to me.
I do the same thing.
Send them to Stevie.
Yeah.
Because once they're gone, they're gone. We can't. To me, it just seems stupid to lose anything, any sort of knowledge, any sort of information. Even if you don't think it has value, someone's going to think it has value somewhere in the future. So that's one of my passions is just making sure these things don't get lost to time.
So how big of a Buffalo Bills collection do you have?
It's a few hundred tapes. Is that big? I don't know.
Wow.
Not too many.
You keep the losses too?
Of course I do.
Okay.
The problem is
that's what I do too.
I was born in 85, so these aren't tapes that I recorded. People think that these are ones that I've recorded and saved.
Yeah.
These are ones that I've found from people that, I've been cleaning out someone's basement and they're like, "Yeah, I got some extra tapes. You want them?" Yeah, sure. People move in. They're like, "Oh, we're going to throw out these tapes." No, don't throw them out. I'll take them. I've met people on Twitter that say, "Hey, I got some old tapes. You want them?" Yeah, send them over. Sure, I'll come pick them up. See what's on them.
Yeah, one man's junk is another man's treasure. And it could be. I've actually my old high school back when this was before I was playing. We had really probably one of the best years they had, and we had a guy that ran for like over 2,000 yards, and he got like all these awards. But we were always looking for video, and we knew it was out there. It had been done, it had been videoed, but nobody could find it. And a friend of mine was cleaning out somebody's garage, and he sends me a picture, and it's a VHS tape, and it's got 1986 Northeast football, and it's got all the names of these. I was like, "Where did you get that from?" And I said, "And how quick can you get that to me?" And let me tell you, you come across, of course, my expectations for that were kind of like, well, this is 86 and it's 2022 at the time. So 36 years? Yeah. So I'm like, my expectations were like, okay, this is not going to be good. When it come out, it was crystal clear.
Sometimes it just, there's no rhyme or reason to it. I think sometimes it comes down to the brand. Sometimes it just comes down to how it was stored. And sometimes you get lucky.
Yeah, and like you said, once they're gone, that's it. And I mean, they're not. And all you Cowboy fans out there, it's the last time you won a Super Bowl was on VHS. So I mean,
I can't laugh.
You did beat us. You did beat us, but you paid Neil O'Donnell off with oil wells in Dallas somewhere. Jared, that's what Neil O'Donnell lived off. Well. No, he lived off the stupid New York Jets paying him all that money the next year to leave Pittsburgh. But that was, of course, that was another story for another time. But man, I'm not going to take up much more of your time. I
All right.
appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime you want to come on, you're more than welcome. We'll talk football. We'll talk Bills. Maybe after the Bills do their draft, we'll come on. You can
Sounds
recap
good.
the draft and tell us what you think. And but yeah, guys, that is Bill Hurley, Buffalo Bills.
Bill Hurley of Bills
super fan on the Final Score. We'll see you guys next week on the Final Score.